In the DC universe, the oldest enemies have stood the test of time, challenging heroes with their dark legacies and relentless ambitions. Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, made his first appearance in Detective Comics issue 58 back in the 1940s. He's one of Batman's most enduring foes, blending high society elegance, of course, with ruthless criminality. Known for his iconic tuxedo and trick umbrellas, he's often underestimated, but he poses a significant threat to Gotham. In the Penguin Affair, which happened back in Batman issue 448, he uses a bird-controlling device to orchestrate high-profile crimes, of course forcing Batman and Robin to outwit his cunning schemes. Now, beyond his criminal exploits, Cobblepot runs the Iceberg Lounge. It's a nightclub that doubles as a hub for Gotham's underworld, of course solidifying his role as a key player in the city's dark underbelly. The show is also pretty great too. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely watch it. Number 9. Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy's tragic origins make him one of DC's most haunting villains. He was once a wealthy man named Cyrus Gold, and he was sadly taken out and dumped in Slaughter Swamp. What a crazy name. Only to rise as the monstrous Grundy. Now, each time he passes away, he's actually reborn but stronger, with little memory of his past lives. A standout story called Solomon Grundy happened in Starman issue 33, and it reveals his bond with Jack Knight, the current Starman, who sees glimpses of humanity within him. Now, this arc explores Grundy's fractured memories and moments of innocence, adding emotional depth to the character, often clashing with heroes like Green Lantern and Batman. Grundy is a symbol of horror, tragedy, and unstoppable strength in the DC universe. Number 8. The Scarecrow. Making his first appearance in World's Finest Comics issue 3 back in 1941. Dr. Jonathan Crane, better known as the Scarecrow, is one of Gotham's most chilling villains, using fear itself as his tool. Once a former professor of psychology, Crane was dismissed from his university positioning for conducting unethical experiments on fear. Sounds like a villain right off the hop. He turned his obsession into a life of crime. He developed a fear toxin that induces terrifying hallucinations, reducing even the strongest-willed individuals to panic. One of Scarecrow's most memorable storylines is Fear of Faith. It happened in Batman No Man's Land issues 1 to 4. In this arc, Gotham is devastated by an earthquake, leaving the city, of course, in chaos. Now, amid the ruins, Scarecrow manipulates a group of desperate survivors, preying on their fears to control them. This story highlights Crane's cunning nature as he uses fear not only as a tool, but as means to exert psychological dominance. Scarecrow has clashed with Batman numerous times on and off screen, often targeting the Dark Knight's greatest fear, which is failing to protect Gotham. His ability to break minds, combined with his eerie presence and unsettling motives, cements him as one of Batman's most disturbing and enduring villains. Number 7. The Riddler. Making his first appearance in Detective Comics 140 back in 1948, Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler, thrives on intellectual dominance. His love for puzzles and riddles often turns his crimes into these elaborate games designed to outsmart Batman. One of the Riddler's most memorable storylines is that of Hush, where he plays a crucial role in orchestrating a grand conspiracy against Batman. Working behind the scenes, the Riddler helps the mysterious Hush manipulate Gotham's villains to target Batman, all of them. His role in unraveling Bruce Wayne's identity as Batman also showcases his brilliance and ability to influence events, all from the shadows. You wouldn't even see him coming. Though often portrayed as this quirky, Jim Carrey nuisance of a character, modern interpretations of the Riddler do highlight his darker, more menacing side, solidifying his status as one of Batman's greatest intellectual adversaries. Yeah, if you compare Jim Carrey's Riddler to Paul Dano's Riddler on screen, they're both very different, but somehow they're both very accurate. Number 6. Lex Luthor. First appearing in Action Comics issue 23 back in the 1940s. Lex Luthor is an embodiment of human ambition and, of course, arrogance and baldness. As a billionaire genius, he views Superman not as a hero, but as a threat to humanity's potential. One of Lex's defining moments comes in All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison. Now, in this critically acclaimed story, Lex achieves his ultimate goal of defeating Superman by exposing him to lethal solar radiation. Now, as Superman faces his mortality, Lex reflects on the choices that led him to become a villain, adding layers to his, of course, complex character. Whether he's battling Superman in a high-tech war suit or manipulating the world's political stage, Lex Luthor remains one of DC's most compelling and enduring villains. Nicholas Hoult is playing this character in James Gunn's new Superman movie, and he looks great. He's bald, fall, so he's already halfway there. Number 5, the Joker. The Joker is chaos. He's a villain who thrives on destruction, anarchy, and of course, tormenting Gotham City. His maniacal laugh, the painted grin, and twisted sense of humor, this all masks a violent and unpredictable nature that makes him Batman's ultimate nemesis. Heath Ledger also, I mean, how do you beat that role? Alan Moore wrote one of his most infamous moments. This controversial and iconic storyline explores the Joker's origin and his attempt to drive Commissioner Gordon absolutely insane. So in a shocking act, he actually hurts Barbara Gordon in front of her father, highlighting his sadistic nature, and the story dives into the dark parallels between Batman and the Joker, emphasizing their shared tragedy and opposing responses to said tragedy. The Joker's relationship with Batman is as much psychological as it is physical. He constantly pushes Batman to question his morals and methods, making their rivalry one of the most compelling dynamics in comic book history. Yeah, Heath Ledger and then Jared Leto. It's like, what happened? Number 4, Brainiac. Brainiac is an alien android and one of Superman's greatest adversaries. Yeah, you had me at alien android. Obsessed with knowledge, he travels the universe, shrinking down cities and then bottling them for his collection. Yeah, I'm more of a seashell guy myself. His cold, calculating nature and advanced technology make him a unique threat not only to Superman, but of course the entire DC universe. One of Brainiac's most famous arcs is in Brainiac. It's Action Comics 866 by Jeff Johns. Now in this modern retelling, Brainiac invades Earth, classic, revealing that he was responsible for shrinking the Kryptonian city of Kandor, and Superman faces one of his most challenging battles as Brainiac's intellect and technology push him to his limits. This storyline redefines Brainiac as a menacing and unstoppable foe while exploring Superman's emotional connection to his Kryptonian heritage. Brainiac's ability to manipulate entire civilizations and his single-minded pursuit of knowledge, of course, makes him one of DC's most fearsome villains. You have to add him on this list. He's old, but he's gold. Number 3, Darkseid. Darkseid is the godlike ruler of Apokolips, a planet of fire and suffering. Doesn't that sound fun? Sounds like a great time. He seeks the anti-life equation, which is a formula that would allow him to dominate all free will in the universe. I'm still struggling with Bedmass. With godlike powers, including the devastating Omega beams, Darkseid is a near unstoppable force, and he's also terrifying to look at. In the Great Darkness saga, Legion of Superheroes issue 290 to 294, Darkseid attempts to conquer the 30th century by controlling powerful beings and threatening the very fabric of reality. That ought to do it. The story is a testament to his ability to instill fear and manipulate even the strongest heroes. Darkseid clashes with Superman and the Justice League, and these ones are legendary, showcasing the overwhelming power and sheer malevolence that make him one of the greatest villains in DC Comics. The Justice League Snyder Cut does have a scene where he's using his Omega beams to take out the entire team, and it's very, very scary. Ra's al Ghul. He is the leader of the League of Shadows, a shadowy organization, of course, dedicated to reshaping the world through destruction. Ergo, the worst of the worst. His use of the Lazarus Pit grants him near immortality, while his intellect, combat skills, and resources make him one of Batman's most formidable foes. In Son of the Demon, Ra's and Batman form a brief alliance against a common enemy, believe it or not. Now during this time, Ra's introduces Batman to his daughter, Talia al Ghul, leading to a complicated romance. Yeah, that one's a situationship. This story introduces Damian Wayne, Batman's son and eventual Robin, adding a deeply personal layer to their rivalry. Ra's al Ghul's vision of global balance through destruction contrasts sharply with Batman's principles, making their battles philosophical and also, of course, physical, because they both know how to fight. And number 1, Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash is the Flash's ultimate nemesis. As if his name didn't hint that. Hailing from the 25th century, Thawne idolized Barry Allen before his obsession turned into hatred. He uses his speed to manipulate time, wreaking havoc on Barry's life and legacy, and one of his most defining moments is in Flashpoint. His interference in Barry's past leads to an alternate timeline where the world is plunged into chaos. Now, in this dystopian reality, Wonder Woman and Aquaman are at war, Bruce Wayne's father actually became Batman, and Bruce Wayne, well, you can guess the rest there, and Barry is forced to confront the devastating consequences of changing time, with Thawne mocking him every step of the way. Yeah, just heckling him while he's in an alternate universe, that's rude. Reverse Flash's ability to mirror the Flash's powers and his unrelenting vendetta made him one of DC's most complex and dangerous villains. They haven't quite figured out how to do this on film. The Flash movie wasn't that great, but I see where they were going with it, maybe.
First up, the one and only Red Skull, a villain so iconic, so malevolent that he's transcended mere comic book pages to become a symbol of pure evil. Hitting the scene in 1941, can you believe it? 1941, this Nazi nightmare was giving Captain America grief before it was even fashionable to punch Nazis. Originally a regular run-of-the-mill horrible person named Johann Schmidt, his depravity was so potent, so palpable, that he was taken under the wing of Adolf Hitler himself and personally trained to be the ultimate weapon of terror. Unlike some villains with flashy powers, the Red Skull's true weapons were his genius-level intellect, his mastery of strategy that allowed him to manipulate events from behind the scenes, and a brutal hand-to-hand combat proficiency honed through years of ruthless training. He may not have had inherent super strength, but his scarred face, a horrifying visage that mirrored the monster within, and his infamous dust of death, a chemical weapon that could kill in seconds, leaving its victims with a gruesome, skull-like rictus, were more than enough to cement his terrifying legacy. And as if that wasn't enough, let's not forget that this embodiment of evil once fused his mind with the pacifist and noble Charles Xavier, leader of the X-Men, granting him powerful psychic abilities for a time, a truly chilling combination of ideological opposites. Next, let's talk about tentacles. We're diving into the twisted genius of Dr. Octopus, or Doc Ock, as he's affectionately known to his enemies. This multi-limbed menace smashed into the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man #3 in 1963, forever changing the wall-crawler's life. Before his descent into villainy, Doc Ock was Otto Octavius, a brilliant and respected nuclear physicist, a man at the forefront of scientific innovation. Tragically, a catastrophic lab accident, a blinding flash of radiation, fused 4 powerful experimental robotic arms to his body, forever altering his physical form and, more insidiously, warping his once brilliant mind. These weren't just any robotic appendages. These highly advanced prehensile tentacles were controlled directly by his thoughts, granting him extraordinary super strength, unparalleled agility, and the ability to manipulate objects with incredible precision. Imagine the dexterity. It's said he can even use them to perform delicate tasks, even while also using them to hold a building up. And here's a fun fact to file away. Dr. Octopus holds the distinction of being the very first villain to ever hand Spider-Man a true defeat in combat. Can you picture that on your supervillain resume? Defeating Spider-Man. It instantly solidified his place as one of the web slinger's most formidable and enduring foes. Now let's dig deep, really deep, for a villain who prefers the dimly lit tunnels and echoing caverns far beneath our feet, the Mole Man. This subterranean schemer actually holds the unique honor of being the very first villain the Fantastic Four ever faced, making his debut in the groundbreaking Fantastic Four #1 all the way back in 1961. That's right, he predates almost every other major Marvel villain. Before he became the ruler of the underworld, the Mole Man was a brilliant, if somewhat eccentric scientist, shunned and ridiculed by the surface world for his appearance and unconventional theories. Driven to the fringes of society, he embarked on a perilous journey to the Earth's core, where he stumbled upon the hidden, breathtaking realm of Subterranea. In this subterranean wonderland, he found not only refuge, but also a kingdom, becoming the undisputed ruler of the Moloids, a race of small, pale, subterranean humanoids who consider him their leader. He might not have flashy superpowers like super strength or flight, but the Mole Man is a master strategist, utilizing his knowledge of advanced to forgotten technology and his command over the monstrous creatures that dwell in the depths to constantly plot and scheme against the surface world he feels rejected him. Plus, who can forget his signature radar sense, a unique ability that allows him to navigate and perceive his surroundings in the pitch-black darkness of his underground domain. How about a villain who proves that true power comes not from brute strength, but from a razor-sharp intellect? We're talking about the Mad Thinker, a moniker that perfectly encapsulates his formidable mental prowess. First appearing in Fantastic Four #15 in 1962, this guy is a strategic mastermind, a human computer with an intellect so advanced it borders on the preternatural. He might not be able to throw a punch or withstand a physical assault, but don't let that fool you. The Mad Thinker is as dangerous as they come. His mind is his weapon, and he wields it with terrifying precision. He's a master inventor, crafting deadly and intricate gadgets designed to exploit the weaknesses of his foes. But his true power lies in his unparalleled ability to calculate probabilities, to analyze his opponent's every move, and predict their actions with uncanny accuracy. He can outmaneuver almost any hero, not with super speed, but with cold, hard logic, turning their strengths against them. He is a chess master playing with lives, always several steps ahead, making him a truly formidable foe, even for teams as powerful as the Fantastic Four. Next up, we've got a villain who embodies the perfect fusion of ancient mysticism and cutting-edge technology. The Mandarin, this iconic archenemy of Iron Man, first graced the pages of Tales of Suspense number 50 in 1964, instantly establishing himself as a force to be reckoned with. The Mandarin is no ordinary foe. He's a scientific genius on par with Tony Stark himself, and a martial arts master whose skills are virtually unmatched in the Marvel Universe. But his true power, the source of his fearsome reputation, lies in the 10 rings he wears, each one an artifact of incredible power, each granting him a unique and devastating ability. We're talking about power rings, ancient and probably alien in origin, that allow him to unleash devastating ice blasts, control the very forces of electromagnetism, project intense heat and concussive force, manipulate light to create illusions, and even most terrifyingly, disintegrate matter at the atomic level. With this arsenal at his fingertips, the Mandarin is a walking arsenal, a one-man army capable of challenging even the most powerful of heroes, making him a truly legendary adversary in the annals of Marvel villainy. Let's add another star-spangled foe to the mix, a villain whose name is synonymous with treachery and cruelty, the original Baron Zemo. Though his first chronological appearance in comics was in The Avengers number 4 in 1964, his story was cleverly retroactively woven into the tapestry of World War II, making him a contemporary and bitter enemy of Captain America during the war. This wasn't just any Zemo, this was Heinrich Zemo, the patriarch of the infamous Zemo lineage, a brilliant and utterly ruthless Nazi scientist whose intellect was matched only by his depravity. He was a master inventor, responsible for creating some of the most terrifying weapons in the Nazi arsenal. But he is best known, perhaps, for his infamous Adhesive X, a super adhesive so incredibly strong, so incredibly potent, that it was virtually inescapable once applied. This seemingly simple invention proved to be one of the most effective and frustrating weapons ever used against the forces of good. Trapped by Adhesive X, even the strongest heroes found themselves helpless, stuck fast, and unable to break free, a testament to Zemo's twisted genius and a chilling reminder of his villainous legacy. Over the years, he was a constant thorn in Captain America's side. And how about a villain who's truly shocking? We're talking about Electro. In The Amazing Spider-Man number 9 in 1964, Max Dillon, your average electrical lineman, was struck by lightning, transforming him into a living power conductor. He can shoot lightning bolts, control electrical appliances, and even travel through power lines. He's a classic Spider-Man foe with a truly electrifying power set. Time for a time-twisting terror. Kang the Conqueror, or should we say Ramatut, showed up in 1963, first as a pharaoh and later in his Kong persona. This descendant of Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic himself, travels through time in battle armor, conquering eras. He's a genius with tech that lets him erase people from time itself. Oh, and he has tons of alternate versions like Immortus and Iron Lad. Talk about complicated things. Ready for creepy? Mr. Sinister slithered into the uncanny X-Men number 212 in 1986. Originally Nathaniel Essex, a Victorian scientist obsessed with genetics, he was transformed by Apocalypse into the ageless, power-absorbing Mr. Sinister. He's got shape-shifting, telepathy, telekinesis, a healing factor, and can steal powers. And get this, he was created by a child mutant, pure nightmare fuel. Last but not least, the bug-eyed ruler of the negative zone, Annihilus. This cosmic creepy crawly debuted in Fantastic Four Annual number 6 in 1968. He's got super strength, flight, and the cosmic control rod, which lets him manipulate cosmic energy and makes him virtually immortal. He's a recurring Fantastic Four foe and even led the massive Annihilation event. This is one bug you don't want to step on.
At number 10 is Tigra, first appearing in her own Marvel comic book called The Cat in 1972. This superhero just doesn't get the spotlight very often. Considering she's been a member of the Avengers in the past, it would only make sense that she might appear more prominently in more recent issues, or even MCU movies. But sadly, her most recent appearance was in a supporting role in Avengers Academy between issues 1 and 39. Tigra's powers began as an experiment by Dr. Joanne Tumalo, who gave her powers attached to her costume, and in this form she was simply known as the Cat. But down the line is when she eventually mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid, through a mystical ritual. She was then bound to a race of humanoid cat people from the Middle Ages, which she could then transform into on command from her human form, using the cat's head amulet. She's a pretty cool hero, so I wonder why they haven't really brought her back in any big way. Maybe they found her too similar to DC's Catwoman, who knows. Next up at number 9 is Stingray, an oceanographer turned superhero who builds his suit in order to explore the depths of the ocean. He helps construct an underwater city covered by a glass dome which he uses to try and grow food for mankind. He first appears in Tales to Astonish number 95 in June of 1967, so he's just on the cusp of the golden age. Just about. This guy is no doubt an older Marvel creation, and if you haven't heard of him, you may not be alone. Although he has appeared as recently as the Iron Man 2020 event, he still only appears briefly as a side character facing off against Captain Barracuda. But at least the writers of that issue probably had the same thought as me, that he deserves to come around again. Once again, my hunch is that he's just a little too similar to DC's Aquaman, which might keep Marvel from giving him any more spotlight than they already have in more modern issues. Although his buddy Namor the Sub-Mariner looks like a carbon copy of Aquaman. But Namor appeared for the first time in Marvel's first ever comic book, Marvel Comics number 1 in 1939, whereas Aquaman didn't appear until 1941. But I digress. It just seems that DC found a way to occupy the underwater superhero market, which keeps us from seeing more characters like Stingray and even Namor more often. At number 8, we have DC's The Question, or just Question. Like Stingray, this superhero first appeared in 1967, but isn't showcased very much anymore. Usually teaming up with the Blue Beetle, this superhero got his last solo series in 1987, lasting 36 issues. He originally had the secret identity of Vic Sage, but was later reimagined in the 2006-2007 miniseries 52, and his protege, Renee Montoya, takes over the mantle. This character is just a good old-fashioned fighter, only really having abilities in martial arts and I guess sleuthing since he's a journalist by trade, but he's just got such a simple and cool film noir kind of look, and it would be cool to see him in a lead role again. Again though, his abilities and look are strikingly similar to Marvel's Chameleon, so maybe by holding back on popularizing this character too much, they're just avoiding butting heads with their competitors. Once again, it's hard to tell. Okay, at number 7, we've got Marvel's Dominic Fortune, or Dominic Fortunov. This character is not only old in terms of his first appearance in the comics, but the character himself is aged to the point where it's known to be one of his biggest weaknesses. First appearing in Marvel Preview number 2 in 1975, this superhero needs a comeback for the sole reason that he's just a guy. He doesn't have any powers, but fought in World War II and always seems to be getting caught up in assassination attempts and weird odd jobs. Like one time when he had to babysit 3 drunken actors in Hollywood for a weekend and had to call the cops on them after things got out of hand. And after that, Fortune actually gets recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury in 1959. He's just a good old-fashioned human superhero who runs into human troubles and stays in his lane, but ends up getting the opportunity still to support the superpowered Avengers with bazooka blasts and covert ops. At number 6, we have DC's Dr. Fate. This guy is old. He first appeared in More Fun Comics number 55 in 1940 and basically hasn't been mentioned again since his death in the Book of Fate number 1 in 1997. So yes, that's a long run. But still, I'd like to see more of him. Dr. Fate is a superhero that's got so much going on and looks so cool that I don't know why he isn't used more often these days. His powers come from an incident when he, Kent Nelson, and his father were uncovering the tomb of ancient immortal Nabu, and Kent is basically trained by the ancient being and awarded with the Amulet of Nabu, a cloak, and a helmet. With the training and these items in his control, he has abilities ranging from magic manipulation and flight to invisibility, super strength, and resurrection, among others. It's just a really cool character based on real ancient myth, and I don't see any reason why Dr. Fate shouldn't have another comeback soon. Okay, number 5, Marvel's Gargoyle. This superhero first appeared in Defenders issue number 94 in 1981, but since then he's actually retired and settled down in Greenwich Village. He even opened a restaurant called Isaac's Oysters. But he did go for one more rip for old time's sake, aiding Iron Man on a mission to take down the android Korvac. But that's sort of been it for him. And what's cool about this superhero is that he was sort of meant to be evil, but just chose good. He was formed when Isaac Christians agreed to place his soul inside a cursed gargoyle and do the bidding of the six-fingered hand. This was all in exchange for his issues to be resolved. But then, when he was tasked with capturing Hellcat, a member of the Defenders, he couldn't get himself to do it, and defied the six-finger hand, and just sort of kept living on as this possessed gargoyle who chose good. He kind of reminds me of Beast. He just has this super wholesome energy to him, and I just feel feel like he could do for more of that sweet, sweet limelight. At number 4, we have Zeta from Batman Beyond, and eventually the Zeta Project cartoon spin-off. The show ran from 2001 to 2002 as part of a spin-off to the Batman Beyond episode Zeta. This character is so wholesome and doesn't get enough attention, having been last seen 20 years ago in what would have been the final episode of the short-running series. This synthoid was built for the NSA to keep an eye on terrorist organizations, so his abilities are pretty extensive, being able to shapeshift into just about anyone to infiltrate and carry out covert ops with ease. He's a naive and friendly character who decides to go rogue after realizing that any one of his assassination targets could be innocent. Zeta had such a moment and clearly a huge approval rating since his one episode got him a whole series, but at a certain point, the world forgot about such a good and powerful synthoid superhero that definitely deserves a comeback. At number 3, there's Warlord, a character the world hasn't seen since his death in Warlord Volume 4, Issue 12. But there should be some kind of revival of Travis Morgan, who is another character on the list who doesn't actually have any powers, but is just a very well-respected and decorated war veteran. He also looks a lot like Oliver Queen or Green Arrow, which could have had something to do with it. They sort of acknowledge this when they finally meet in the same comic, and all of the Seattle underworld mistake Warlord for Green Arrow and attack him on sight. But whatever the reason is, Warlord's legacy deserves to be acknowledged with another appearance of some kind. I mean, the lore behind the character is that in past lives he's been Sir Lancelot, D'Artagnan of the Three Musketeers, and Crazy Horse among other legendary warriors and soldiers. He's just a great human character with, might I add, a really cool costume and some badass accolades to boot. Bring him back. Okay, at number 2 on the list we've got Komodo. This superhero really was a flash in the pan, only appearing on and off for a few years and having her legacy end with her powers being stripped. For a time, until they're restored again by Cloud9 and Hardball, but that's sort of it. And I think the last time she's been seen is in the Fear Itself storyline, which wrapped up in 2011, which is 11 years ago now, believe it or not. But this character needs to reappear in some way. The superhero was first created because Melody Kusama lost her leg in a serious car accident, and none other than Dr. Connors from, yes, the Spider-Man series, decides to endow her with the regenerative powers of a lizard. Well, not only that, of course, she actually turns into a lizard fully and at will and gains super strength, speed, agility, stamina, all that good stuff. I think this story is a good one to retell because who doesn't love a good story where someone confined to a wheelchair is able to not only walk again, but fight crime and be pretty damn good at it. Okay, last on the list is just my personal favorite, arguably obscure superhero 3D Man. An athlete turned superhero, 3D Man mysteriously gained superpowers after being stripped of his 3 Olympic gold medals. I mean, he was taking steroids, but there's always room for redemption, right? This character first appeared in 1998 and no one ever really talks about him. And to be honest, I didn't even know he existed until I started writing this list. And I want this hero to get more spotlight primarily because I'm a sucker for early 2000s culture, and this character is just such a great time capsule for that period, where everybody was obsessed with 3D for some reason, with DVDs coming with 3D glasses in the case, remember that? And 3D Man has the same nostalgic look to him, with many of his appearances being colored in green and red. If you want to look him up yourself, you'll notice that he originally went by the name of Triathlon and later changed to 3D Man during the Secret Invasion storyline. This guy just looks so cool and hits home with some good nostalgia for me, as well as probably anyone from the Gen Z or millennial generations. And there's also just a silly factor there too. 3D Man needs to come back. Please, can we? Just for 1 second.
Number 10, Black Panther. The leader of Wakanda made his first comic book debut appearance in Fantastic Four issue 52 in 1966. He is often credited with being the first black superhero to appear in comics. The only sad thing is that it took us that long to get one. The 60s! Such a long time. In comics, so long. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The first story involving him in the pages of Fantastic Four Volume 1 are pretty hilarious and great. If you haven't read them, you kind of should. They're interesting. Black Panther invites the Fantastic Four to Wakanda. Naive as they are, they accept. But what they don't know is that Black Panther longs to fight them. Of course, while the comic originally seems to be spinning Black Panther as a villain, it is later revealed that he only wanted to test them, and the fighting was merely to prove their merit as he needs their help. In the next issue, issue 53, we learn more about his backstory and why he has sought out the Fantastic Four. We are also introduced even more to the land of Wakanda with its unique combination of new age tech and tradition. old and new. So there you have it. Number 9. Green Lantern. Before Hal Jordan or Guy Gardner, there was Alan Scott. He was the first Green Lantern and was created by Martin Nodell, making his comic book debut in All-American Comics issue 16. When this first Green Lantern made his appearance, he probably seemed to be pretty cool, I'm sure. This was way back when the Green Lantern was still an actual lantern, by the way. It's just this lantern he was carrying around. But in retrospect, Alan Scott is known as being one of the silliest Green Lanterns because he has one of the strangest weaknesses in comic book history. Wood. While there definitely wouldn't be openly gay superheroes for some time yet since he was introduced in 1940, I like to think the fact that he is helpless against wood might pose a double or symbolic meaning. I'll just let you ponder what you will about that. But that's just me. Either way, the weakness is a hilarious one to see in comics, just villains beating him with wooden clubs and baseball bats, and it would later be fully explained and made semi-logical later on, but still, it's ridiculous. And I love it. Number 8. Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger originally started appearing in a comic strip and would later receive his own comic book series in 1948, which went for over 100 issues. Before he was even in comics though, Lone Ranger was a superhero recognized for his radio show, which debuted in the early 1930s. The first few comics consist of compilations of his comic strips, but new stories began with Lone Ranger starting with issue 38, which saw Paul S. Newman writing and Tom Gill on art. The Lone Ranger was known as a mysterious masked Texan Ranger who would fight bandits and outlaws in the Wild West of America, with his loyal pal Tonto and his trusty steed Silver. Hi-ho Silver away! Number 7. Tonto. You didn't think I was going to talk about Lone Ranger and just leave Tonto out of this list, did you? Tonto was originally shown as Lone Ranger's native partner and was part of the Comanche tribe originally. Some may think of him as just a sidekick, but as time progressed his character tended to be more presented as an equal and partner to the Lone Ranger rather than just a sidekick. He got his own comic book spin-off series in the 50s titled The Lone Ranger's Companion Tonto, and was often depicted as being witty and sarcastic, even going on to mock other less favorable portrayals of himself in pop culture that made him seem more savage. I like when heroic characters are self-aware and sassy like that. I feel it. Deadpool, She-Hulk, Tonto. Keep being sassy, keep being witty. Number 6. Superman. Superman is that hero that you usually think of when someone asks who the oldest superhero is during a trivia night. And honestly, I'm sure it's an acceptable answer by most trivia standards. But not here. Not here. Here we go further. Superman is widely thought of as being one of the oldest, the original American comic book superhero. But seeing as how he is number 6 on this list, I think us mega nerds would likely know otherwise. Still, he came out in 1938 and first debuted in Action Comics number 1. And honestly, if you read his original appearance, it's easy to see what all the hullabaloo is about. It's basically a piece created to show off and introduce just how unstoppable Superman is. In fact, Superman would continue to be presented as near invincible until the 80s, acquiring more and more powers with each appearance. And then we had to fix that. We had to tweak that because it's too much power. Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Number 5. Sheena. Queen of the Jungle. You might be wondering just where Wonder Woman is on this list, but Sheena actually predates Wonder Woman, and her own self-titled series even predates Wonder Woman's by a few months. She was originally published by Fiction Comics and was known as Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Most 1930s Queen of the Jungle I have ever seen, but yet. Sheena's abilities included super strength and agility, and the ability to communicate with animals. She made her first appearance in WAG Comics issue number 1, and her self-titled series came out in early 1942, just a few months before Wonder Woman. Only a few months. So close, so close. Number 4. Kazar. Kazar is known as being one of the first Marvel superheroes. Can you guess who the other one is? Let me know in the comments. But there are actually 2 Kazars. The one I'm referring to here is David Rand. He appeared in Marvel before they were even known as Marvel back when they were Timely Comics in 1936. Kazar shared many similarities with Tarzan and was very passionate about protecting the surrounding wildlife and animals where he grew up. He also fought against Germany with the Allies in World War II, fun fact. In fact, the last story we have of him shows him setting out to provide more wartime aid. The other Kazar we would meet later in the 60s was known as Kevin Reginald, and was the son of the man who discovered Savage Land. Both Kazars also appear to be English. They had an English heritage anyways. Interesting. Number 3. The Phantom. The Phantom originated in comic strip form where so many superheroes were originally born. He was created by Lee Falk. The Phantom actually introduced the idea of a costumed adventurer to American comic books. Before that, we didn't really have people in tight spandex running around. While the Phantom, aka Kit Walker, found popularity in comic strips in the US, his comics didn't quite shine so bright. Internationally, however, the character seemed to do much better, becoming a hit in Australia, Sweden, and Papua New Guinea. He also was originally from a a fictional country in Africa, so no wonder he did well in Papua New Guinea. I feel like they were like, I can see some similarities here. Number 2. Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers first appeared in a comic strip. He is a hero who comes from a world of sci-fi set in the future of the 2400s. 24,000s? 2400s, yeah, 2400s. Depending on what medium or comic you're reading, the last 2 digits of that year are also apt to change for his story. He made his comic strip debut as Buck, but the character was originally named Anthony Rogers in the novel that inspired the comics, Armageddon 2419 AD, written by Philip Francis Nolan. The story follows the adventures of a young man who is frozen for almost 500 years in suspended animation before waking up in the future and rediscovering the world he once knew, in a time that he is less familiar with. Honestly, if you aren't aware of Buck Rogers, but you are a fan of cosmic superheroes or sci-fi and weird space adventures, I highly recommend you check this classic out. Also, if you just like some time travel-y stuff. Who doesn't like time travel-y stuff? Everyone is like me, I hate it, but there's a few of us I know that like it. Number 1. Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack was originally a character in English folklore and urban legends. His being was reportedly cited all over Great Britain in the 1830s, and the stories involving him inspired writers to use him as a character in both a play and in Penny Dreadful novels, which were short serials, the original comic books really of the time. He has since seen other comic book series dedicated to him as time has progressed. Spring-Heeled Jack was originally described as a gentlemanly looking demon, and later described as looking like the devil himself, complete with horns. He was often known for breathing fire. Whoa, scary stuff. While his character was originally posed as a villain, he later developed into a misunderstood hero, a nobleman who sought to steal from the rich and give to the poor, complete with his own gadgets to help him perform his noble feats. Kinda like Robin Hood meets Batman. It's kinda what he was doing. Meets a guy that looks like a demon. Just combine all those, you got Spring-Heeled Jack.
Number 10. Lasher. Lasher was created when a company called the Life Foundation forcibly extracted 5 offspring from Venom. You see, during the Cold War, the Life Foundation believed that a nuclear holocaust was coming and wanted to create a superpowered police force to protect this new world or, utopia that they were creating. That's when they decided that a symbiote police force would probably be the best option. One of those 5 symbiotes was Lasher. Lasher merged with Ramon Hernandez and is known for his green color and the tentacles on his back, which, was his primary attack, and for the most part, it was very effective. Number 9. Phage. Also one of the ones created because of the Life Foundation, Phage bonded with Karl Mack. Phage is known for his orange and black appearance and being able to mold his body into sharp blades, similar, to Carnage, which was effective against his opponents. He's also one of the largest symbiotes. He has a build that is very similar to Venom, which along with those blades would make, a really deadly combo. Number 8. Agony. Agony, also a Life Foundation creation, bonded with Leslie Jasnira. Agony was unique in that she was able to spit acid that could burn through almost anything. Agony also had the power to absorb and regurgitate chemicals. Oh god. That's so gross. She also had a very different look than her siblings. She was bright purple with hints of black and had wavy hair. Of course, she also had sharp teeth and massive claws. Number 7. Riot. Riot is, well you guessed it, another symbiote created because of the Life Foundation. Riot bonded with Trevor Cole, who was a mercenary. Riot took on a very similar appearance to Venom. His build, size, and color scheme were all very similar. He's also considered to be the most violent of the Life Foundation creations. Riot is also the only one of his siblings to make a live action appearance, so far. He was the main antagonist in the 2018 film Venom. Now, in the film, he didn't actually merge with Trevor Cole, instead he went with the head of the Life Foundation, Carlton Drake. Who knows? Maybe we'll see some of Riot's siblings in future films. Number 6. Scream. Can I get created because of Life Foundation for 500? Oh, thank you. Scream ended up bonding with human Donna Diego. Scream's color scheme is also very unique, at least for symbiotes. Scream is yellow and black. Also, it is believed that Scream is the strongest of the symbiotes that were extracted from Venom. The reason being is that even though, she was eventually defeated, she took out and killed the host of the other 4 symbiotes that were created by the Life Foundation. Scream also used her long, flowing hair as a weapon, whipping it and slicing her foes. Number 5. Hybrid. Have you ever wondered what would happen if 4 symbiotes merged together? Well, that is exactly what Hybrid is. Hybrid is Riot, Phage, Lasher, and Agony merged into one. All 4 of their hosts were killed by their sibling Scream. Hybrid merged with Scott Washington, who was a guardsman at the prison The Vault, where all 4 of them were actually being held. Now, Scott ended up realizing these 4 symbiotes weren't actually all that evil, and that the experiments that were being done on them were actually causing them like a great deal of pain. So, he decided to free them, and he got fired for it. They eventually bonded with him, and because of that, Scott actually regained the ability to walk. You see, years earlier there was a shooting that killed his brother and left him paralyzed. He wanted to go after the people that caused this and kill them, but get this, the symbiotes actually told him not to do it. They didn't actually want to kill anyone. So they ended up finding the people responsible and handing them over to the authorities. You see, not all symbiotes are bad. Also, since there were 4 different symbiotes merged into one, Scott had to deal with 4 different personalities. Man, that would be an experience. Hearing all those voices in your head, probably make you go a bit crazy. Number 4, All Black the Necrosword. Alright, so this one isn't technically an old symbiote, but it is the oldest symbiote. You get it? You know what I mean? Okay, what I mean by that is, even though it was introduced in Thor God of Thunder #2 in 2013, it was revealed that it is technically the oldest symbiote ever created. It was primarily used by Gore the God Butcher. It was so powerful that it could kill gods and celestial beings, and every time it did kill them, it took their blood and got even stronger. It instantly became a fan favorite, and because of it, we got one of the most popular Thor stories ever written. And, fun fact, it has also been used by Galactus to destroy worlds. I mean, the thing is insanely powerful. Number 3, Toxin. Toxin is one of the newer ones on this list, but of course that doesn't mean he's actually really new. Toxin debuted all the way back in 2004. Now, since all symbiotes create their offspring alone, they don't actually need to mate with one another. This eventually ends up happening to Carnage. Now, Carnage was naturally worried because each offspring is said to be stronger than their predecessor. Because of that, Carnage was ready to kill it as soon as it was born. Good old Carnage. When Toxin was born, Carnage just couldn't kill it. He did try, but Toxin was just already too powerful, and it ended up bonding with Patrick Mulligan, an NYPD officer. Toxin is also red and has a slim spider-like appearance when he was bonded with Patrick, but later on he ended up bonding with Eddie Brock and grew to be a lot bigger and way scarier. He also has an amazing healing factor and is more resistant to sound and heat than most other symbiotes. Number 2, Carnage. Carnage is the first child of Venom. Carnage is all red and is one of the most powerful and terrifying symbiotes around. Seriously, this guy is what nightmares are made of. And to make matters worse, he bonded with a serial killer, Cletus Cassidy, who we will finally see in live action for the very first time this year in Sony's Venom 2. I mean, fingers crossed it turns out well. I'm really hoping. Okay, but back to the comics. Carnage was created when Venom left behind his offspring in the prison where Eddie Brock was being held. This new symbiote offspring made its way to Eddie's cellmate, Cletus. Cletus then broke out of prison and began murdering a ton of people. No surprise there. Carnage also went on to become one of Spider-Man's greatest foes. Number 1, Venom. The original symbiote. While he may not be the strongest or technically the oldest, Venom is still considered to be the best by a lot of fans. There's a reason people have grown to love symbiotes so much, and it all has to do with this guy. He was first introduced when he bonded with Peter Parker, giving him, the famous black suit. Although, fans weren't instantly happy with Spider-Man's new look. It did become a lot more famous and well liked as time went on. They eventually did make him change back to his, good old red and blue spandex. And the alien symbiote found its way to another host, Eddie Brock. Fans just couldn't get enough of Venom, and to this day, he is regarded as one of the greatest Spider-Man villains of all time. I mean, the guy had his own film in 2018 and it grossed over $856 million at the worldwide box office. And that was with a mixed response. Not a lot of villains could do that.